Ahoy there, YouTube! I'm back again for another episode of Before You Back, where I spotlight some potential red flags on Kickstarter pages so you can make a better informed buying decision to decide if you want to plunk down your hard-earned money. If you enjoyed this segment or enjoy my channel, please be sure to click on that subscribe button down below, as I'm trying to get 9,000 subscribers to celebrate my 9-year anniversary of making YouTube content. And today we're going to be talking about Shadow Tactics, the board game plus solo CoOp Ronin expansion, and I won't bury the lead here. Why this gets its own segment is because Shadow Tactics, the board game, was actually already on Kickstarter, and yet they didn't send out copies of the game to the original people. I also do want to mention that there are some potentially suspicious commenters, but we'll get into that in a second. So the first thing I want to talk about, and I always mention this, is you should always look at the previous created projects of a designer. And so here we have Saltlands, and I do want to mention one big shout out to them. There were some people who had some issues with some cheat sheets in the comment section, and they actually got that fixed and got those sent out. Likewise, we have Critters Below here, which once again did eventually receive funding, and there were some people in the comments who had some issues with some shipping or some misprinted cards, and for the most part, it feels like they were good on their customer service. And what that tells me is I don't necessarily feel like this is a scam or anything like that. Sometimes when I see Kickstarter pages, I say, oh, this looks like a scam. This one does not. It just looks like a company that got in way over their head. And so let's talk about Shadow Tactics, the board game, because this actually was funded. It received $85,000. Wowzers, that's a good chunk of change. But the game never actually got shipped out to people. Now, you probably don't want to do all the research because they have 52 freaking updates to go through. However, so I will give you the cliff notes, or if you want to go find out yourself, go to update number 40 if you want the exact specifics. Now, I will be blunt here because I'm always blunt, but pretty much what they say in this very, very, very long-winded post is, hey, we totally, well, I'm going to tell you exactly what they said for the most part, which is, we have decided that due to a lot of people wanting a solo and cooperative mode, and because there was a slight hiccup in the manufacturing of the game and it got delayed, that we're just going to add this game mode. But not to your actual copy of the game. We're going to add it as an expansion, which is why, hence, Shadow Tactics, the board game, has the solo co-op Ronin expansion. And this is very important, because normally Kickstarter will not let you put out another product if you haven't shipped your first product, unless, of course, it adds something new. So now they're saying, hey, this isn't Shadow Tactics, the board game. We actually have something new here. It's the solo co-op Ronin expansion, which is how they get around the fact that normally you can't do this sort of thing, because as we mentioned, no one has gotten the original version of the game. But the basic premise is that they decided, hey, we're going to completely go back to the shop. Our game was not as good as we thought it was. We're going to hammer out some details, and then we're also going to add this Ronin extra expansion. And so that really is the extent of what's going on here. Which then leads you to more questions like, well, if this didn't successfully fund, which luckily it did, would you still be able to put out the original versions of the game? Which to that, I do not believe they have answered. But I do. So that essentially is the Shadow Tactics. That's the biggest red flag that I saw. Now, I do want to mention something very small and minor that you might want to know, which is there's some very suspicious activity in the comments section. So one thing I've noticed as I've delved deeper into these Kickstarters is sometimes there appears to be what are called plants in the comment section. People who say nothing but nice things and help people out, but are not collaborators or the creator themselves. And I will let you go to this page if you really want to make the decision yourself if these are real people or not. But let's first talk about Hobgobbos, who is mentioned no fewer than 33 times in the comments section. And yes, there are a couple people in the comments section who pop up between 25 to 30 times, which, let's be quite frank, have you ever commented on a Kickstarter page 25 to 30 times? Have you ever been mentioned 25 to 30 times on a Kickstarter page? I've ran a Kickstarter page, and I don't know if I have. Next we have Hero Wannabe, who comes up an astounding 42 times, but that does not take the cake, because Julia has mentioned 60 times. She also pops up very, very frequently in the updates as well, and she just pretty much says thank you to a lot of people and mentions cool stuff and is just like a PR person for the company. Now, the first thing I want to mention is this could totally be a real person. I'm not trying to insinuate that it's a fake person. That's for you to make that judgment yourself. And it could just be a very close personal friend of the people making the game. So I do want to say that, and then in some cases I always recommend that you have someone close to you when you make a game. But nonetheless, it always does look suspicious when someone is that insanely on point in your comment section, so I did want to spotlight that. But there you go. This has been Before You Back on Shadow Tactics, the board game plus solo CoOp Ronin expansion. In the end, I don't feel it's a scam, but it is a company that I would potentially worry about giving my money to. And the reason why I say that is I have seen other companies do something very similar to this, and the one that I will cite is Fifth Street Games, where essentially they got to the point where the only way that they were able to push out Game 1 was by creating a Kickstarter for Game 2, and then they were able to, finally push out Game 1, and they were hoping that Game 1 would be so successful that it would then pay off the rest of Game 2, because they spent the money from Game 2 to do Game 1. But if that's not the case, then you have to go to Game 3 to push out Game 2, and then if something happens to happen on Game 3, or one domino does not fall the correct way, then you have a lot of backers who have lost their money. And I don't want that to happen to you. And that's why I do this segment. So this has been Shadow Tactics, the board game, plus solo co-op Ronin expansion. And hopefully now you can go to the Kickstarter page, which is down below if you still want to back it, just a little bit more of an informed consumer. If you enjoy what I'm doing, please be sure to click on that subscribe button. And as always, thanks for your time, YouTube. Bye-bye.